Welcome to my podcast. Today's dream, tomorrow's reality. My name is Vickie Poole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And it's all about embracing our mosaic life. Now, some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing, and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host, and I have a special guest that I will introduce in just a moment. But before I do that, I would love to ask you to do me a solid, and that is to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this lovely lady here with me is Janet Hamilton, and we were just getting to know each other and talking before we started recording. And I said, we've got to stop talking and start recording because we're going to have the whole podcast and not have a recording of it at all, because she is definitely fascinating to listen to and she loves talking and telling stories. So I already know that about her. And so, Janet, if you don't mind, just tell everybody just a touch about you, and then we'll just get into having a conversation and letting me get to know you better.
Sure. I'm not quite sure where to start, but I am Janet, and I've just recently launched my own podcast called The Anomaly Factor and a coaching website that is currently being under construction and rebuilt. And I also own a company named Durham Combustion Limited with my husband, and we've had that for a little over 30 years.
Mm.
And we moved up north to our manifested place from when we first got together. We knew we were going to end up here. That was the plan. But we're an hour away from most people. We moved in on a lake, an hour in the bush, and there's not a lot of feminine energy. And then I lost about 10 people in 2.5 years, totally burnt out, fell, was immobile for 2 months. And I started my own personal development journey at 39 because I wanted my shit figured out before the proverbial 40. I'm going to be 60 in February,
So, how did
and
that work out? Did you get your shit together?
not at all. I'm going to be 60 in February. So almost 20 years later, I'm still at it. And I really believe I've just connected with myself for the first time in my life about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, somewhere in there.
So, are you from Canada?
I am in
Okay.
Ontario.
You just said that about. However it is you say it. I'm Southern. I can't say it quite that way. So go ahead. I just love that certain little tweaky things in the phrasing that it's just indicative of living in Canada. And I love those little tweaks every now and then. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's funny you should say that because I was talking to someone else the other night from the States and they said, "Oh, I love your accent." I said, "I'm not the one with the accent. You are." Anyway, so yeah, I started at 39. I've done multiple retreats, courses, and it's just the first one that I did was Hoffman Institute in Canada here,
Mm.
and it literally blew my mind. And I haven't looked back. And I think my husband hates me on a lot of levels for it because it just opened doors and pathways, and I'm a sponge. I've always been interested in psychology, the mind, the body, how they function, relate. And little did I realize that there is something inside me that I now know was my soul trying to align within and screaming to get out because that was in the base of my being and it's sitting in my lips right now. So I still have a little bit more work to do. But I'm finding it fascinating and mind blowing and healing. I literally felt a physical shift in my brain from the right hemisphere to the left. And it took about 6 months for my body.
So this was during the retreat?
No, this was just recently, about six
Okay.
months ago, a year
Okay.
ago. And it was very discombobulating. I cannot describe how it felt other than I physically felt that shift and then my body settling down. But I was perplexed by the whole thing. And I'm taking certification programs right now to be certified in compassionate inquiry, transparent communication, and relational life therapy for counseling for couples. And I absolutely love it. And I'm doing this to help heal people because I think I've been doing it most of my life and not really having a process. But I also realized through all of this that I grew up with absolutely no boundaries. And I think with that, like I really
So,
don't know.
so I got a question for you. Okay. So you have siblings, correct?
I do.
Okay. How many do you have?
Two, well, three. One I don't know.
Okay.
I have an older brother apparently out there in the world somewhere. And I have a brother 2 years younger and a sister 6 years younger.
Okay. So when you say you grew up with no boundaries, does that mean that, well, what does that mean? Let me
I
just ask.
basically felt like a feral child. I had a roof over my head, I had food in my
So
belly.
your parents didn't check in on you and find out where you were going and what you were doing and that kind of stuff. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I've basically been self-led. And I don't think it was because they lacked love for me, even though I was an accident. I was at their wedding. Um, they got married because I was coming. And both of them, I've realized recently, grew up with no fathers from the age of
Hmm.
3. So I've learned that I've had childhood emotional neglect, and I've been parentified since a young age. So I felt very heavy in my body, my neck, my shoulders, very responsible.
So you had to
And
take care of your siblings. Is that what you mean?
I took care of everybody but myself. I
Yeah.
love everybody but myself. I did not know you had to love yourself. Not that I disliked myself,
Right.
but I gave care, empathy, compassion to everyone but myself. I was running on empty, like Dr. Brené Brown says,
Yeah.
her title of her book, right?
Well,
And I,
when I was a child, I had a sister that was 9 years younger than me and a brother that was 11 years younger than me. And then 2 years after my brother, I think it is, my niece came along. And so it was my responsibility to take care of them. My parents were hairstylists, and then, especially on Saturdays, they would go to work and I was keeping the kids. And I used to resent them like crazy because I wanted to go to Six Flags with my friends and spend the night on Friday night and get up and go and do things with everybody. And if I got to spend the night with someone, I got picked up about 7 a.m. to go home and take care of the kids, and I would clean the house, probably not very good because I was just a kid. And then I was supposed to fix the food for them while I had them. And I would cook dinner for my parents when they got home. And then when I was in high school, when I got my driver's license, my responsibility was to pick them up from after school. If they needed to go to the skating ring or whatever, I was the one that took them and came back. And there was so much of my life that I felt like I was the parent and I was the one that was responsible for all these things. And that carried on into my life to where it didn't matter what relationship I got into. I started as the caregiver and then I would resent being the caregiver. So it was like I was training people to have me care for them. And then I would get mad because they expected me to care for them. So I perfectly understand. It's not the same thing probably, but I understand perfectly what you mean by all that. And it's not like you wake up one day and you say, well, I'm not going to feel this way anymore. It's like it's a process, right?
oh, 100%. And I've been saying this a lot to a few people. It's very hard going through it because it's emotional pain. And most often we suppress those negative emotions and we're not even aware that they're energy and that we have to expel them. At least I wasn't. I mean,
I think most people don't know. They don't realize that holding those emotions in and not letting them out and dealing with them actually affect their body and the diseases and the different things that happen within your body are all repressed emotions. And for instance, this is probably a share I don't need to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. I had not too long ago, I had all of a sudden, it felt like my hip had this little chink in it, you know. So when I was walking, I could feel it, and I thought, oh, that's weird. Why? What is that? And then it seemed like it went from there to I couldn't hardly walk. And I thought, this is crazy. What did I do to my hip? And then I thought, okay, what have I been thinking and feeling? And so I sat down and got immersed in that, right? I did go to the chiropractor and get a little work done. He's not a regular chiropractor. He does kinesiology and all these. One of his clients, which is a friend of mine, calls him the voodoo doctor. But he does amazing work, but it wasn't doing anything. It felt like it was getting worse. And so then I ended up going and I have a lady that I work with now that's an energy healer. And after one session with her, one session, I could walk. Now, it wasn't 100% by any means, but I could walk. And I had gotten to the place where I could hardly sleep. I had to almost sleep sitting up with my a pillow under one of my knees. And if I moved the wrong way, I would wake up crying. It was horrible. And I thought, there is no way I can keep going like this. But my first idea is not to go for traditional medicine, even though I'm going to go ahead and
I
say it.
think
I'm
we
not
froze for
saying
a bit.
people shouldn't go to doctors. I'm not saying any of that stuff. But for me, it's like an inner job first, and then we go on to something else. But the the people that do that kind of thing, like that, I think that's what you were saying you do is the energy healing and everything is it's profound how just having a conversation and I think we did some meditation and we did some we had this little I have some mala beads and we used the mala beads and did some phrasing almost like tapping phrasing with the mala beads and stuff and I thought wow I mean I do hypnosis and stuff but that's a little bit different, you know. And so it's just mind-boggling to me about how just having these experiences can actually affect a hip, a bone, you know? And so, yeah, the energy stuff is just otherworldly almost.
You're bang on. And this might be more information than you want to hear, but
I doubt it.
my story, I might as well tell
Yeah.
it. Um, I've literally changed everything about myself in the last year. And you're 100% correct. It's an inside job, but I had no clue about that until recently. And it was because I had to put the boundaries in to save my life because I was just too far gone the other side. In my healing journey, I have discovered, how do I put this? I feel like, you know how you have that proverbial onion with lots of layers? I'm like a
Hmm.
Spanish onion that's in the Guinness Book of World Records because I had a lot of layers to go through. And it's taken me a long time. And I think partly it's because your brain is only able to process certain things at a time, or it would be just too debilitating and overwhelming, which I think probably would have been my case if I hadn't done it all at once, because it's taken me 20 years. But because I've been a caretaker and literally looking after both my parents, a cousin, and they've all passed since, not due to my caretaking. I
Well,
just want
definitely
to add that
clarify
little.
that.
I didn't have time for myself because I was too focused on everyone else because I was the responsible one. I was
Hmm.
the accountable one. I was fine. I was strong. I
You're the
was
oldest, right? You're the oldest child?
the oldest one, yes, the analytical one. And I didn't go inside until I burnt out because I just didn't have anything else to do. And I wasn't happy, partly because I wasn't aware of certain things, but also I was dealing with an unsurmountable amount of grief from all the people that I lost. from my extended family that I put boundaries up. I haven't heard from them since I put the boundaries up.
That
So it could be dead.
happens.
They wouldn't even care. Um, it's sad, but I'm the problem, right? And I felt that way. I felt like I was the crazy one most of my life because I was that leader. I wasn't afraid to do things differently, although I felt differently inside. Not that I had anybody else to compare the normal to, because I think we all have our normal and our story. But I fought a few years ago to get a sleep apnea machine
Hmm.
with our medical system here. I didn't qualify because my numbers weren't high enough, but I was not getting restorative sleep. I was up every hour,
Wow.
and I knew that it was the precursor to heart disease and to dementia, which are both very prevalent in my family. And I'm fighting for my life and trying to be proactive, which I find most of our quality of care is not proactive, it's reactive. And here I am trying. And they said, you need to speak to your respirologist. And I said, I have. I said, I was even willing to pay for the machine myself because I knew it was going to save my life. I finally got the machine, started sleeping 8 hours a night, getting rest. And then in the last year, I've noticed a difference in my breathing. And it used to be very shallow and it used to be very, like, I didn't really consciously think of it, but I would cut my own airway off with my tongue. So I didn't have your traditional sleep apnea. I
Mm.
had obstructive sleep apnea.
Okay.
And that's just the preemptive. So my story is kind of discombobulated like the rest of me. Um, I had postpartum depression and psychosis when I had my firstborn, and it went undiagnosed for 18 months. And I wasn't sleeping. I was depressed. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And I can remember waking up one day and sitting on the couch, and my poor daughter was crawling around on the floor, and I'm looking at her, and my mind is not right. And I can remember having suicidal thoughts and going, but I just had my baby girl. I've waited my whole life to have this baby girl. I wanted a family. I wanted somebody to love and to love me back. And I'm going, but I don't want to be here anymore. And nobody's going to look after you except for me, your mom, or as good as your mom. And I don't know why, but I just knew in that instant to get up. I went back to my doctors who I'd been seeing for the 18 months, more so for the infant shots and checkups. But also, I knew I wasn't right. And I was hoping the doctor would figure it out. He had never had experienced it himself because it was his first year of being a doctor as well. My mom had taken me at 18 to the cottage, and over dinner, we had a discussion one night, and she told me a few things that had happened to me at the age of 6 months old. But she also had told me stuff about my grandmother, how she at 12 had witnessed my grandmother bleeding to death on a bathroom floor from aborting a child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I knew what had happened to me. And then about 6 months ago, and both my grandparents on my grandmother's side, we don't know what happened to them, but all
So
of the
what
children,
happened to you when you were 3 months old?
6 months.
6 months old.
Um, my mom told me my first drunk was 6 months old. So I was crawling around for the first time, and my dad was tired after working all day and would sit a drink down on the floor, and then I would just crawl around and drink it. And he'd go to have it, and I would be gone, and they kept refilling it. And I ended up at the hospital. It wasn't intentional, it was just neglect, really. I mean, not intentional again. It's just they were busy, probably. And then I was at my uncle's trailer in the summer with my parents, and they were checking on me back and forth and had propped me up on a double bed in the trailer at one end with pillows around me. And then they were each taking turns checking on me. And one time they came back and I was at the opposite end of the trailer, unclothed and on a couch and incapable of getting there myself. So a few months ago, and you have to remember that through these courses that I'm getting certified for, there's a lot of triads and dyads and help so that we deal with our own triggers so that, we're grounded in our space when we're helping the others.
Yeah,
And
when I went through health coaching and transformational coaching and all that, we were coaching each other. And there were many times that I was sitting there with tissues and crying and snot rolling down my face because I was just letting so much out, right? And I'll be honest, when I first decided to become a health coach, which is what I did first, I thought if it doesn't help anybody but me, it's well worth spent, and that's the way I felt with each one of the things I did is like, I know it's going to change me, and that's perfect. And then if I can help other people, even better. But it's like those things we have to do the change within, or we can't actually go through the process of helping somebody else make that change.
it's funny you should say that because that's part of the boundary thing. I had a knowing. People would come to me and ask me for help. They would just come up to me in the grocery store and pour out their lives to me. And I didn't understand this energetic stuff or the boundaries. And it was like, why me? Why me? I couldn't figure it out. And then I would tell them, and they would hate me for what I told them because they weren't ready to hear it. And then
Hmm.
that was part of the realization in my training was even though I know I have to let them figure out how to live their life on their own, I'm supposed to just help them do that, not tell them how to do that.
Yeah, you're the guide.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this before. So about 6 months ago, during one of these triads, I ended up filming myself blubbering for about 3 hours after having the recollection that I don't know if it was a third incident or if it was in that trailer incident, but I do believe my mom, probably the same as my grandma and I, tried to suffocate me with a pillow at 6 months of age. And I think
Mm.
that's breathing has a lot to do with that. Not being able to express my voice. I have the inability to articulate under certain circumstances and I just freeze. And I think it's takes me back to that 6 month old where I was incapable of breathing and or speaking out or asking for my needs or help, which I still have a tough time doing, but I'm aware of it now and I'm learning that it's okay to reach out for help and that it's not weak and that it's really not me, that we all need help and we are better off supported by like-minded people.
Yeah.
And I found that with these Zoom squares all over the world for the first time in my life, that I feel like I'm not alone. I've always felt alone, but mostly because I didn't understand the emotions, the feelings, and or the sensations, which I'm just starting to figure out now, which is perplexing again, because I feel like a 6 month old growing up and parenting herself all over again. Because I really don't know what I like and what I want and what I love and what my needs are, or how to ask for them.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, but I feel less alone and more connected now with less people in my life.
Nice. Interesting, but nice. At least you are at the place where you have a connection now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's an inner peace and a freedom that I've never ever known. And one of the courses that I joined was called Millionaire at Diamond Academy with Kathleen Cameron. And she said it's an inside job and I've changed everything about myself and yet nothing at all. And I'm going, how's that possible? Now I'm going, it's possible. Done it. And it was like, wow, I didn't understand, but I do now. And all of these people are the people that I want to be with because they're not reacting. They're not projecting, they're not blaming, they're not shutting down, they're not defending. And I mean, I can go on and on and on.
Yeah. It's a safe
I don't
space.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's deeper conversations, and people aren't afraid to be authentic and show up as their wounded self, like we all are, because they're not aware. They don't even know what awareness is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that is the
It's kind of
first,
like the movie The Matrix, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
We're all living there.
Yeah. And once you know that it's there, you can always see that it's not there. It's like, and you're blown away with the amount of people that are walking through life not knowing.
Oh, COVID was the tipping point for me.
Yeah.
It was a blessing for me because it forced me to slow down, and I've learned it's not safe to just be for me. And I have to force myself to relax because I don't, everything my body wants to run. But watching all of my friends and family react completely different, which they're entirely entitled to do. But it was very interesting for me that they didn't like the control, even though it was supposed to have been for their safety and everything else. And I think that's when I noticed how dysregulated almost most of the people in my life were, including me. And it's crazy because we all want love and peace in the world, and yet most of us don't even have peace within. So
Yeah.
how are we supposed to show up in the world and be relational with others if we don't have that peace within? It's just not possible.
Yep. But most people, they blame everybody out there for all the circumstances and they don't take responsibility. And it's like I was having a conversation. I have a group on Facebook that's called Stand Up and Stand Out. And I do a daily affirmation and journal prompt. And one of the ones that I did recently was all about, having the being open to change, but also seeing, what's going on in the world and your place in it. And that if things out here do not look like what you want them to, you can't blame these things out here. You have to start within here. But most people don't really want to know that because then if things are shit, they're to blame. And people don't want that. They'd rather have somebody to blame because then if it's not working, there's somebody to blame. But if they take it as this is an inside job and it's not working, then they would have to be responsible for it. And it's like, I'd rather somebody else be responsible. And most people, a lot of people like living that way. And, that's okay because that's important in the world too.
Yeah. And I think if people realize that we're all mirrors and reflections of one another, that changes. But that's awareness.
Yeah.
That's showing up and being responsible. We only have one job in life, and it's not to grow old, it's to mature.
Yeah.
That's really getting to the core of who you were meant to be, not who the world made you out to be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a book that I like, and it's by Vishen Liakani, or however the heck you say his name. He's the founder of Mind Valley.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yes, I
but
know.
um, but it's called, oh God, what is it called? I'll think of it. But anyway, in this book, he talks about rules, which are bullshit rules that the world and the people around us have served us on a silver platter as we were growing up. And we can either decide to take ownership of their bullshit rules, their rules, or we can make our own. And because when you do this work, you realize that it's the things that have happened to you in your past and everything that were good, bad, it doesn't matter. But those things were things that people had their own beliefs and they did things or they did things to you that were their piece of whatever their inside was, and that we can decide to not let those affect us now. And it's really hard sometimes to let them go. But the way I look at it is we have this growth in ourselves. And if everything had been roses the whole time you were a little kid, the whole time I was a little kid, I probably wouldn't be doing this now because I would have been lollipops and rainbows, and it never would have occurred to me that I'm an empath and that I can help people, or that maybe, you know what I'm saying? And so we have all of these journeys to go through to get us to this place. And so when I look back at the things that have happened in my life, now, I didn't do it in the beginning. In the beginning, I was pissed off. I was mortified, whatever the emotion is. But as I got older, and going through this process, I can look at them and say, okay, that happened and it was not a good thing. but what did I gain from it? What's the learning experience that I had with that that makes me a better person? And that's why in my podcast I say we live this mosaic life, because it's all those little pieces of every friggin' thing that happened. Some things are really good and some things are really bad, and there's a lot of stuff in between. But any one of those things not there, we're not who we are. And I like who I am. And so I'm grateful for everyone, every friggin' bad thing and good thing that ever happened in my life. It doesn't mean I have to say, okay, you screwed me over. Stay with me. No, but I can take the lesson, right?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think everybody is exactly right where they're meant to be.
Hmm.
This moment literally is all we have.
Yeah.
And I think most people are stuck in the past or worried about the future.
Yeah, that's right. That's where they live. Someplace they're not.
Exactly. And I think I've lived my whole life like that only because it was the only way I survived.
Well, it was the
I did,
only way you knew.
yeah, like if I had a got held back or like I felt stuck my whole life, but I didn't really feel stuck, if you know what I mean. Everything happens for a reason, and it's finding those little lessons in life and what we learn from them and grow. I mean, if we're not growing and elevating, we're dying.
Yeah.
It's like muscles, right? It's life is a muscle on its own, basically. If you're not building your muscles, you're disintegrating.
Yeah. I always say the one constant in life is change. So you're
Exactly.
always changing. It's either you're changing by default or you're changing on purpose. So you get to do that by deciding on how you want to live your life. And like I have a quote that I always say at the end of my show, and it's the best way to predict the future is create it, because we're all the time creating. And the people that say, well, that's not true, that doesn't work, it's because they've been mentally creating the old thing the whole time, just keeping it up.
Because they're not conscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree 100%. I it's I thought of something there to say and I forgot what it was, to be honest with you.
It'll come back to you maybe midnight tonight, but it'll come
Yes,
back.
usually, right? Do you want to call
That's
it
what
3 o'clock
happens
in
to
the
me.
morning?
Let me send you a text real quick. I just remembered.
Yeah. I just awarenesses are gifts, in my opinion,
Hmm.
of connecting you back to who you really were meant to be. And it's the resistance to what is that causes most of us the suffering and the pain.
Yeah.
Because to me, there's only one reality, and it's we're all looking at that reality through a different lens. And that lens is our experience. And there's genetics. I mean, epigenetics, I believe I've healed at least 4 generations of ancestral trauma through this as well. Given the story that I just told you, I mean, I knew the 3 generations, but I skipped the one that it had done to me. And that was the emotional connection I needed because it was like, it's not me. This was done to me. But I've learned that trauma is not what's done to you. Trauma is how you internalize what's done to you. And I've done and believed everything was about me. I've
Hmm.
internalized everything. I was my own worst judger, my own worst critic. And I loved everybody in the world. And most people think I'm crazy for doing that, but we all come out of a vagina. Well, most of us. Some of us now are born in petri dishes, but for the most part, our experiences and our historical genes are the only things that make us different. And we all have a story. Just some of us aren't aware of it.
Hmm. Are not willing to look at it. Sometimes people can be aware that something's there, but they just don't want to look at it. Because, like, I was listening to a podcast this morning, because I listen to podcasts all the time, podcast or YouTubers, which sometimes is the same thing. And and one of the things that he was talking about was how people can just um spend. Now, here, I just lost my thought.
It's rubbing off.
It's catching. It's catching. Oh, what was it?
Timers.
Huh?
Some timers.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me, maybe about midnight, but it'll come back. So, um, uh, I lost it. I lost it. So no
Okay.
worries, no worries. So let me ask you a question. So with all the things that in your past and all this new journey that you're on, and if you could wave a magic wand and life could be exactly as you want it to be, what would be different about your life today?
I wouldn't feel everybody's pain.
Mm,
That's something I've realized in the last year that I resonate with absolutely most people. And it's their pain that I resonate with. Little did I realize that it was my own pain that I was not seeing.
yeah, so it's that mirror principle.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I didn't see myself. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't know myself. How could I? I disconnected from myself at 6 months of age and maybe even sooner because I've realized recently that my father was a narcissist. My mom was severely depressed, and they didn't have the emotional capacity for themselves, each other, let alone me, a crying, screaming little baby. But I never felt unloved. I do believe they loved me to the best of their abilities. And it was funny, about 2 months before my mom passed, I can remember kneeling on the floor washing her feet. And I looked at her and I said, Mom, you deserve so much more than this. And that was before I knew what I know now. And I honestly really, hmm, it's making me emotional.
that's okay.
It pains me that I wish I had known this 2 years prior to my parents passing because they didn't have what I have and they deserved it. But given what they came from, they gave me everything.
Yeah. So is it okay if I share?
Mhm. I need to
So
collect my feelings.
yeah. So the thing I want to share is a thought about what you just said, because we just said a few moments ago that it's our journey and we're going through this process. And the beautiful thing that you did for your mom, to her, that might have been just the perfect thing. It
I hope
wasn't that she needed more, is that she got exactly what she wanted in the moment. And if you had been on the journey 2 years before, there's something that would have happened different that would not have touched your mom in the same way. And so you
you.
gave her an amazing gift that happened exactly because you hadn't gotten here yet.
But I'm here now, and I really wish that they had have gotten me where I'm at.
What
And
would have been
that's,
different if you had been able to do that?
yeah, probably because
What
everything
would
happened.
what would have been different, do you think?
I think maybe she would have found more peace within, but they did not know what awareness was, not
Yeah.
at all. They, I've never heard them discuss anything like that. They basically were together and lived separate lives. They were just not present for each other or for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were living in the same house, and yet there was no relationality other than, you know, what to do, what not to do. I mean, you were talking earlier about um, something, and it came to mind that I can remember coming home after I would go to school and then I'd work 2 or 3 jobs after school and then I'd stay out all night. And I'd come home around 6 o'clock in the morning as my dad was in the washroom getting ready for work. And I'd go to bed for 2 hours and start the whole routine over again. And my dad would just go, "You just going to bed now?" And I went, "Yep." And that, he was fine with it because he knew I was responsible because he used to come to me for advice. He used to come to me for finances. He taught me well how to save and spend, and I was his bank when he got pinched. And then he taught me about interest. Like in a lot of ways, they taught me well, but it's just the emotionality. And this is a huge thing because had I not done it, I probably would have been ill or much more ill than I've been. I really
If you
think I
hadn't
probably
done what?
saved my life connected with him
Okay.
because what you said earlier is disease is actually dis-ease in the body. And our bodies are so intelligent that we can heal almost everything. But you have to become conscious and aware of the patterning of the limiting beliefs and choose to show up differently, which is not easy for me because I've had a whole life to do. And I've learned that there's attachment issues, and we often marry our worst nightmare trying to heal those unresolved childhood wounds that we never got from our parents. And my husband and I are both very aware of what we've both been through and very committed to healing those generational patterns. But I'll tell you, it's not easy. And I know there's love there because we have gone through so much and intend to go through a lot more to heal ourselves. Nobody's been there for either of us but each other. I call him
Yeah.
my rock. Mhm.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, if it's okay, I want to touch back on the thought that you were having about your parents and that you wished you had gotten all this clarity and movement in your life 2 years before. To me, just feeling right here, it's important. So if it's okay, and I'm sure you've heard this before, we have this reason that we incarnated on this earth. And so I heard a story one time, and you may have heard this before. And if you have, just listen anyway, because I don't want to look stupid. So just listen.
Go for
Um,
it.
but let's just imagine that these souls have all landed at the bus stop. They're at the bus stop together. Have you heard this story?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I feel better now. So all these souls are there and they're all talking and they're all excited because they're about to be put on earth into a human body. And so they're talking about things. And one of them says, well, what is it that you're supposed to learn? And that one says, well, I'm supposed to learn forgiveness. Ooh, that's a good one. And I'm supposed to be learning, and I think it's humility, if I'm remembering right. And they said, oh, then we need to connect when we get on earth because I can teach you forgiveness. You can teach me humility, and everything will be perfect. And so these souls come to earth. And then many years later, there's two vehicles passing on the road. One of them has a full family of people, and the other one's just one person. They collide. Both drivers survive, and the one with the family, everybody perishes. So their souls, one was learning forgiveness to forgive the driver of the other car. And then the one that was driving that other car had to learn humility for having caused that accident to start with. So they were on a collision course the whole time to satisfy the thing that they wanted when they came here to begin with,
To learn their lesson in life.
to learn their lesson in life. So if you look at it that way, if you had gotten your gift 2 years before, you might have made your parents happier in the moment. You might have done those things. But what if you had taken away the lesson that they were here to learn? And then they would have had to repeat or do whatever it is we do to learn that lesson again. And so that's the way I look at it, is that, like we're all on our journey to learn stuff and to for this cosmic thing that we signed up for. And so that's why when something happens really bad to me, it's like, okay, hopefully this is not something I'll have to repeat. So I'm going to take whatever I need to learn out of it. And I'm going to do my best as time goes to release the energy that has been put in me and the feeling that I have on the subject so that I am learning that lesson and my karmic debt has been paid.
Yeah, see, this karmic thing, I've got a lot in my system apparently from
Yeah.
many generations back. And
So,
that's
how does
part,
that make you feel when I'm telling you that story? Does it make you feel that maybe that was their journey?
no, I do believe exactly what you say, but before being very conscious about it, that's what I said.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. And hmm, it's like the story of the Wizard of Oz. It's very similar, right? Where one was lacking a heart, one was lacking a brain, and they just wanted to be a whole human being. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that many of us are whole. I think we become whole, and I'm not in a hurry to become whole because I think when I'm whole, I'm going to be 6 feet under. And I don't want to go there too quickly.
Yeah, well, I feel like if we've learned everything we needed to learn, then we're expired anyway, right? So, yeah, you're right. You would be 6 feet under because we all are growing and learning all the time, and pivoting and swirling and moving. And I kind of like to say, and I share this with a lot of my people in my group, is that I feel like life is a symphony. We're all musical instruments, and all the things that happen in our life are all the little notes that are out there that we've been playing. And so there's all the time these notes and this song that's playing, and it's either a beautiful, beautiful orchestrated thing or it's like a screeching, musical instrument that nobody really knows how to play. We get to choose how beautiful this symphony is. And so it's our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our interactions with others, and how much we learn to, like you were saying, the self-care thing, the going inside and healing all those wounds and that trauma and everything so that you're not to keeping repeating things. That's our symphony.
Yeah, and I think earlier I said something was at the base of my being, and knowing what I know now, I do believe it was my soul trying to get out and heal me.
Yeah,
And it's taken me my whole life to find my voice, more so in the last 20 years. And I physically felt that energy come up and out of my body and into my chest, into my throat, into my mouth. And now it's literally sitting in my mouth. And I've had 3 different people tell me that I need to go on a ayahuasca journey now because so much of what I've experienced, it wasn't what was done to me. That the traumatic stuff that was done to me was minuscule compared to what was not done to me. Because my dad was a workaholic, not present, narcissistic. My mom was depressed. I didn't have the holding, I didn't have the mirroring, I didn't have the breastfeeding. Hence why I think I partly cut my own airway off because I didn't have that muscle built in my tongue. And it's just really mind blowing that it's come full circle. And I mean full circle for me. If you knew the stories and the stuff that I've been through, I do believe everything happens for a reason. I think everything's on a spectrum. But because I've grown up with no boundaries, it's like everything's kind of come to a head now.
yeah,
And it's, oh my God, I can hold both because both exist.
yeah,
But it was the resistance to that that was causing myself my own pain and suffering because you only see it from your lens and
that's
you're
right.
fighting to defend that, right? Until you
Hmm.
become conscious aware of why. And then the blinders are lifted and you see everyone differently, you see life differently. Things are brighter, lighter, and the way they're meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to say that all the limiting beliefs that we have, it's like our lenses, every one of them, we put a little layer of Vaseline on our lens, every single one. And then after a while, it's so thick that all we can see is little shadows of who we could be. It's not us anymore. And so it's learning these tools and not only these tools, but like you were saying, your community, gathering with people that are, have a common goal of self-healing is paramount to this journey. And each time you can get into that place with the people and within yourself, you're peeling a layer of that Vaseline away until your glasses are clear. And so it's a beautiful thing when you can have that connection with the people that you are learning all your stuff with, and then the communities that you become part of because of who you changed into, who you became. All those groups of people that you connect with will be very different after you've gone through that process.
Problem is, I'm not sure if you are aware, but like there's 5% of highly sensitive empaths in the world. And I think that's why most of us feel so alone, because I want somebody next door where I can go over, have a cup of tea and a deep conversation. And I can't. I got to jump on a Zoom call to Poland or the States or
Yeah,
somewhere
well,
else
I
by
mean,
myself.
that is true. The thing is that just think about 5 years ago, would you have been able to do that so much? No, you would be stuck and you would be alone. So I feel like there's gifts, and like to me, the best thing that came out of COVID was this,
I
because
agree.
before COVID, this didn't happen in this way. That Zoom even redid everything to accommodate it. And I'm a hypnotist as well as a transformational coach. And before COVID, nobody did hypnosis on Zoom.
I was surprised to find out how much I could feel through
It's
the Zoom
amazing, right?
squares.
You can
I,
feel
it,
the energy, everything. Like I have a friend who does Reiki and she's done Reiki with me, and I can feel that energy coming through the screen. You can feel all that vibration, the whole thing. And so it's amazing gift. And like I said, that was the most amazing thing that came out of COVID. But like you said, it caused you to slow down. That's what it did for me because I was a full-time hairstylist at the time, doing learning and doing coaching and everything too. But my salon shut down and it was like, now what do I do? But it was like one of the things for me, it's like, it's how can I make this good? And so my daughter was wanting to go to Portland. I said, okay, how often will I have this many days off together? Let's go. So we did a road trip. Even though things were closed and all these different things, we had a great time. We went to Portland. She decided to live there for a while. I flew back. But I mean, I guess I can say that because I never got sick. Now, I do have a friend that got sick with COVID, and she's not the same person she was before. She had trach several times. She was in a coma for a while, and she's not the same person. However, I still feel like for me, it was amazing the things that I learned through the process.
I agree. I found myself. It was
Yeah.
worth it. And this program that I told you about earlier, Millionaire, it was to get in and deal with your limiting beliefs and
Hmm.
create and show up differently and build something, which I've done.
So, what
But
was the best thing that came out of that course for you?
I've, you were supposed to be able to make $1 million, but I haven't made a penny. But I
Oh, okay.
feel like
Like
a
a
million.
million dollars.
I feel completely different on the inside. It's, like I said, calm, inner peace, freedom. I
Beautiful.
don't feel stuck anymore.
Well,
And that's
prosperity
why,
is not just money.
no, it's not.
Yeah, and you're proof of
Money
that.
does not buy happiness either, right?
That's right.
So, yeah, that's why I'm doing the Anomaly Factor podcast, because this is what I want to do, is just connect with like-minded people. And I'm a connector. So I will put people together if I feel it'll be beneficial for them.
Nice.
And I want to show my family, my friends, the rest of the world that when you heal yourself and go within, that you can show up differently and be able to create and choose the life you want to live, not the one
And
that
that
you.
your voice is important,
Yeah,
regardless of whether other people like it, believe it, anything.
Yeah, and I've never used my voice. I mean, the people around me would tell you differently because I never shut up. But I think that was the anxiety that's gone.
Yeah.
And now I'm speaking up for myself. I'm advocating for myself. There's literally not a lot of stuff going on between my brain and my mouth. I'm just here always. And I get myself in trouble quite a bit because I stick left in with right, but I know I trigger a lot of people. And I kind of starting to think that that's what I'm meant to do is just to
Yeah,
wake up.
I was just about to say that's okay. They must be wanting to be triggered or they wouldn't be in your path.
Yeah, but they blame me.
Do what?
And I'm okay. They blame me. And I used to think it was me, but now I know differently.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you know this too, but for me, it's like what I used to be put off and feel guilty or upset if somebody blamed me for something. But now I realize it's not anything to do with me. It's all them. And I've triggered something in them, and the only thing they know to do is to push it off on me. And if that's how they deal with it, that's fine, but I don't have to take ownership of it. And of course, sometimes that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because we were talking about responsibility earlier, and it's being responsible, right? To
Mm-hmm.
tune into yourself and everything. But I had this parentification and this sense of responsibility my whole life that was heavy and weighted and tense. And I don't have that anymore. But I still have a sense of responsibility that I need to heal people because people are suffering and they don't need to be. It's all emotional, it's not being taught. And I'm afraid our medical system is profiting over keeping us all sick because I do believe people know how to heal and to correct. And I mean, on the news last night here in Canada, I think it was $200 the government was giving people now, another rebate for something. And I'm going, stop giving money out, just lower the price of food so people can afford to eat healthy because your gut is where it all starts. If
Mm-hmm.
your gut brain is not healthy, you're not going to have a healthy brain. And your heart is your emotional center. And it just all succinctly runs together when you understand the process.
Yeah.
And if they want us healthy, then they're not going to be making money off of us with prescriptions. They're not going to be making money off of us with all of the x-rays and MRIs and everything else. Our bodies can heal themselves.
Yeah.
Have to give them the love and the attention they needs.
Yeah, I agree. And when you're talking about the medical industry, and I certainly don't want to get banned because I've said this, but if
That's what's
they
going to have to be.
if they cured cancer, there would be a plethora of businesses that would just automatically close. Many millions of people would be out of a job because they are part of that industry that is medicating or treating, diagnosing, building these huge buildings to house the people that have cancer. And I mean, it is mind blowing. So when they're raising money to cure cancer, sometimes I wonder, I'm hoping that they cure cancer because there's so many people suffering. But if people could get to the place where they're internally working, they're doing the things to make their bodies healthy, like you mentioned epigenetics before. And it's like people say, well, somebody in my family had the same thing. Well, that could be true, but you also grew up where you were doing the same things. And so those same things produce the same thing. And so it's like epigenetics, it's we all have a predisposition for cancer. There's cancer cells and genes and all that stuff in all of us. The thing is how you live your life is what pulls the trigger and makes it happen. And so we can do so many things. And, you know, I'm praying on the fact that at some point it'll get to where because what is it they say? We've become a woke society. There's more people that are learning and growing and everything. And that as that keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then it's going to get to a place where people are not going to adhere to all those ideas that have put us where we are. And then maybe then it'll just change. Maybe it'll be a gradual thing, probably not in my lifetime, but maybe it'll gradually get to the place where all the things that we're doing that create that disease, we stop.
Yeah, people wonder why they can't make a difference in their life and they keep showing up the same way over and over again and expecting change. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we are at time, and this has been amazing. I love all the little twists and turns that we've gone in, and I still have not remembered what I was going to tell you earlier, and you probably haven't remembered your thing either. So you
We'll
can
talk
you
again.
can you can email me later and say I remembered, I remembered.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Oh, my
And
pleasure.
I hope to return the favor and interview on my podcast.
Oh, yes, definitely. So before we go, I want to ask you if there's anything that before we got on here, you really thought, oh, while I'm on there, I want to make sure I speak about this. And maybe I didn't ask you a question or you didn't think of it in the moment. Is there something that was on your heart to share that you would like to share now?
I think so. We've touched on it. I believe healing is possible and it's a choice, and you have to choose you. And freedom, inner peace, and calm are on the other side.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And so I'm going to once again share my quote that I just dearly love. The best way to predict the future is create it. And that's what we're doing here. And so it seems very appropriate in this moment. And so it has been a blessing to have you here. And I will, for everybody that's watching or listening, I will have all of your information in the show notes, the comments, not the comments, the description. And so everybody will be able to connect with you. But before we do, go ahead and tell them again what your podcast is. So, or is it where it's there? You've got some that are published so they could go listen if they wanted to, correct?
Not quite yet
Okay.
myself,
Okay.
but I have been on others, kind of
Okay.
announcing that I'm starting it. So my podcast is going to be called The Anomaly Factor because I felt like the anomaly my whole life, swimming in the wrong direction. And then I learned that, of course, I mean, intellectually, I knew we were all different, but we're all meant to be unique and show up as we're supposed to. And yeah, I'm doing the healing and the coaching through the Anomaly Factor as well. And I'm trying to showcase people that, they were here, they're now here. And what was it that they did? The mind shift, the soul shift, to
Yeah.
show that it is totally possible. I mean, the possibilities are endless, limitless,
Yeah. Yeah. I
right?
agree. So, do you have a website or do you have a Facebook group? Do you have anything like that? Because what we'll do, if there's not a link that you can tell us right now, I will be putting it in the description, like I said, so people can go and check you out there. And we can actually put the name of the podcast, and then by the time it's out, this is out, maybe you'll already have your first episode and they'll be able to listen to it. So we'll do all that.
Yeah, so the website is under construction. It's just getting rebuilt. But it's www.theanomalyfactor.com, and my email address is janet@theanomalyfactor.com.
Beautiful. I love it. So, once again, thank you so much for being here. And for everybody that's watching and listening, thank you for being here. And make sure to like, subscribe, and share with a friend that probably needs to hear exactly what Janet's here today talking about. And I will see you next time. Mwah.